well for the baby. So that's the purpose of that, is that you're really trying to colonate a nice garden inside of your colon and inside of your vagina, because the baby is going to go through the seeding process. Now, do you know anything about the seeding process? So what they've discovered is that when babies are being born vaginally, they are picking up all those microbes on their skin, in their nose, and in their mouth as they're being born. And when they get here, that golden hour of skin-to-skin time is allowing them to seed all the microbes that they picked up in the vagina. So as you can imagine, it's a lot better to have all the good microbes in the vagina as opposed to the not so good ones. So you're going to be tested for group beta strep, because that's one that we don't want to be there. We don't want it to be heavy in E. coli, heavy in yeast, things like that. We want it to be very heavy in all the different families of lactobacilli, rhamnosus, and bifidobacteria. That's what we really want it to be heavy in. And those are great things to fluorinate the baby with. So it's also part of the reason we wouldn't bathe the baby right after birth, because we don't want to colonate the baby, then wash it all off with an aggressive bath. So while it may seem odd, home birth babies are usually not bathed for about 3 days to give them time to really seed, because the seeding process is setting their immune system. So your baby's immune system, 80% of it will give rise from the colon. So you want to get them seeded as well as you possibly can. And you'll be doing that a few ways. Nice, good flora from your vagina, not bathing the baby after birth, doing the skin-to-skin time when you have the baby, and then breastfeeding, because your breast milk will also have good microbes in it. So that's how you're going to get the immune system off to a really great start. Protein. So as we all know, protein is the big muscle tissue builder. Everybody knows that. They just don't know how much they need in pregnancy. So the minimum they found is 85 milligrams a day. It goes up from there depending on if you like to go to the gym. If you are, sometimes people have a habit of running. They do marathons. I've had a few marathon people in pregnancy, and so I find that they need quite a bit more because they're burning off a lot of their protein. So they will have the signs and symptoms of a protein deficit even though they're consuming 85 grams, but it's because they don't have enough. The protein has also been tied in to women with preeclampsia, which of course is very common for African American women having their first baby. That's a big thing for us. So we really have to get it in, because the protein is what's going to promote vascular relaxation. It's what's going to give us the stretch. And then I like to tell everybody, for our vainness as women, is what allows the tummy to stretch without stretch marks. And it's also what determines if your vagina can stretch without swelling with fluid and then popping. So you can have a really intense birth, intense pushing, and it'll all hold if you have enough collagen and elastin in your vagina. But if you don't, you could spit out the smallest baby, and that vagina be all swollen up with fluid and come apart because we didn't have the right nutrition on board. So if you notice that you ever have swelling in your hands, swelling in your feet, if you're starting to get stretch marks, then you really want to pump up and try to see if you can catch the protein up. You could probably catch it up vascularly. You could probably catch it up before the birth of the vagina. But I tell people, if you've already started with stretch marks, I don't know that you would necessarily catch it unless you did smoothies with some collagen in it. And then there's also a lot of research that shows that the IUGR, that shouldn't even exist. Intrauterine growth restriction. That is a nutritional deficit. That's a protein deficit. It's only a very rare case where that isn't. And even that would come back to nutrition. And that's if the mom is a smoker and we really had constricted vessels most of the time and things aren't passing through. But even if you were eating enough of it, it would still pass through and you would still get a nice, juicy, healthy baby. Potassium. So that's a new one for me. I had not, a year and a half ago, been pushing potassium so hard until I did some hunting and found out that potassium can be at the root of a few problems. And if I have a mom that has a lot of nausea and vomiting, and we have definitely gotten the protein up to 85, it's definitely sufficient for her, how she lives her life, and she's still really sick, I know it's because the potassium is off. And I also know if she's swelling in the hands and she's consuming enough protein, it's because the potassium is off. I didn't realize the two of these work so close together until about a year and a half ago. They kind of move and do things in tandem. So if you bump the protein for a woman and she's still having the same symptoms, the problem is that the potassium is not up high enough. And it's very hard to eat 4,700 grams of potassium. It's so difficult that I tend not to get on to women if they can't get it all in. I just tell them if we could just hit 3,000, that would be great. But the need, they all know that the need is really 4,700. But they'll try it and then they'll say, oh my gosh, I can't get the 4,700. I can't get the 4,700. And because this is really something that you would have to eat a lot of vegetables all day. A vegan can get it, a vegetarian can get it, but us meat eaters, we're gonna struggle to get 4,700 milligrams of potassium every day. So take for instance kale. Kale has about 900 of potassium in it. V8 tomato juice has about 800 to 900 of potassium in it. Your potato, if you roasted a potato with the skin on, that would be good depending on the size of the potato, between 800 and 1,000. The same thing with a roasted sweet potato. If you roasted a sweet potato, you could get the same. If you ate a cup and a half of lima beans, you could get 1,200. If you did the green tops to beets, like the green part, you could get 1,000 from that. So a lot of people just don't consume a ton of those things, so they can struggle to get it. I give them a list of high potassium foods. Those are most of them that I named. There are many more with less, but people always think what? Bananas, exactly. But a banana only has 350 milligrams of potassium, and when you're trying to get to 4,700,
a lot of bananas.
You would be eating bananas all day, and you still might not get there. So it's not that is not an easy one. So it's the same if you have difficulty sleeping and you can't turn your brain off. You're like, oh, I just think, I can't shut my brain off. That's actually a potassium deficit. You don't have enough potassium going. If you go to your provider and they check your heart rate and your heart rate is always running 99 and above, you don't have enough potassium on board. So we all know that potassium plays with the heart rate and is run by, utilized a lot with the heart, but we don't always tie those two things together. We'll just be quick to tell moms, oh, you're pregnant, your heart rate runs high. No, she needs some more potassium is what she needs. She can run a heart rate of 70 or 80. If she has enough potassium on board, she'll do it. Sometimes the moms say, oh, my heart, it feels like it's beating really hard inside of my chest. I feel like I can hear it beating. That's actually a potassium issue. And if it doesn't correct with the potassium alone, then that leads us into the magnesium. So sometimes you need a little magnesium to go along with it. The magnesium also has a lot to do with us sleeping well at night. When we can't get a solid night's sleep, we're woken up very easily in the night, or we go to bed all night, but then we get up and we're like exhausted, like, gosh, I don't even feel like I slept. Magnesium will help you with that. So some companies sell a really good magnesium lotion, but they can be hit or miss if the person doesn't have a really great recipe for making it. So I usually will have the mom supplement with 400 milligrams of magnesium in the evening at bedtime if they're having a hard time sleeping, or if they're having muscle cramps and their potassium is pretty much on par, we'll just add in the magnesium and that does the trick. And a lot of times the moms will notice as they get this diet going when they're missing something. They become very aware and they're like, oh, I didn't take my such and such today, and that's what the problem is. Vitamin C. So the name of the game, I would say, for everybody, and including in pregnancy especially, is to keep your inflammation processes down. So that's where your antioxidants come in. And when we think about inflammatories that can be found inside the placenta that have led to preterm birth, that have led to preeclampsia, they've done a lot of studies on placentas. They give us a lot of answers to things. An antioxidant would have been really good for that. And the reason that vitamin C is such a great antioxidant is because when you have the free radicals that are going around robbing other molecules off that periodic element table, saying, I'll just take one of your carbons, that causes more damage to the blood vessels, especially in causing the blood pressure to go up. It's a real issue with the blood pressure. But vitamin C travels with lots of extra carbons to loan out. Is it carbons or hydrogens? Might be hydrogens that it's loaning out. I have to double check that, but it's loaning out one of them. And so because it has so many extra ones, it can rebind all of those up. So that's why it's called an antioxidizer. And so that can kind of bring the inflammation down in the vascular system, and then we can all do better with that. So that's the one. So then we come to these simple carbohydrates. That's going to be our rice, and if it's not a brown rice, or our pastas, if it's, a bleached pasta, any sweets. Now we're moving into simple carbohydrates, which is not a needed nutrient. We don't need that for anything. What we want to do is limit it. If we could get it to 0, that would be great. Of course,
not happening.
Nobody's going to get it to 0. And I like to work in reality with the mamas. I don't like to tell them things that I know they're not going to do. So the government recommends 30 grams or less. But when you do some checking, that's 1 tablespoon of sugar. Or it might be a teaspoon. I'm trying to remember if it's a tablespoon or a teaspoon. So I can't really hold them down to that easily. So I tell them that it's 50 or less, and I let them know that we're 20 over with the 50. But you'd be surprised how many people are really consuming like 100. If you love those protein Cliff bars, 20 grams of sugar per Cliff bar. If the mom is drinking soda, which nobody should do in pregnancy, but we have people who are doing that, they're consuming about 40 grams of sugar in that, along with a bunch of other garbage that they shouldn't be drinking. Same thing with juice. Most juices, orange juice has about 20 grams of sugar. So really we want to be water drinkers.